Hey everybody, welcome to Cat and Beats and welcome to another In the Mix episode, this time again sponsored by Voxengo. And we're going to be going over the tape bus, we're going to be going over the elephant limiter, and we're going to be going over the harmony EQ, and then specifically a couple of little tricks and tips that I had to implement that you can implement as well for your own mix. So make sure to stick around for that. But before we get into that, we need to also have a listen to what we're working with. And today we are working with the song Love Will Lead Us Home by the lovely band Gliding Squares. So go check them out. I'm putting up their SoundCloud now as well. So go over there, give them a follow, give them a like, and listen to the final product there too, or final song. And yeah, let them know what you think and all that kind of good stuff. Now, all the way at the end of this video, I'm also going to have a quick A/B of what the song sounded like before, so that you have an understanding of what mixing does, just in case you don't know. So right now, let's have a look through the track, and we're going to have a play through the track to familiarize ourselves with sound.
Lifetime of memory in pictures of family. Love will lead us home. Each day we're grateful is all that we live for. Love will lead us home. Love will lead us
All right, so as you can hear, it's a huge track. It's very loud and this big stadium type of sound. It's awesome. It has real bass, real guitar, real vocals, some real drums layered in with fake drums, little, bleepy things. Awesome. So I had a fantastic time mixing this. Anyway, talented guys. Again, much love to Gliding Squares. Love will lead us home. Please go check it out. And they're in the description. Again, okay, last time I'm getting too excited. Anyway, let's get started with this. I used 2 tape buses. And this tape bus is the closest thing to tape that I've used that it got to. So this tape machine shows up to work and doesn't go, let's put 70 dBs in the low end because that's what tape's supposed to do, right? No, it's not. It's supposed to give this thing called depth, and you can control your top end and give a little bit of a squish overall. So let me show you that so that we understand what I'm on about here. And let me also talk about tape a little bit, because otherwise it won't make any sense. So normally, if you get a tape plugin, it always looks like a cat. So you have this low end bump, and then you get in the tape machine, whoever it is, you get this top end. And then at the end, you have 2 little dots, one there and one there. There you go. And you get this cat, Batman pretty much showing up. And this is what tape machines, when I get a VST plugin, sometimes sound like, and I'm just like, oh God, I would just use it as a distortion plugin instead of this. So that is a cool shape, and maybe there are tape machines that do that, but the ones that I worked, so the studio I was in, the main guy there, the big boss honcho dude, he owned the studio and owned the tape machine, and he would go on and on and on about the tape. And just now do I understand why he was so raving about it, because what it does, it gives 3D depth. Why does it do that? It's because the tape machine, if it's aligned nice and all the stars are aligned in the sky and the left channel doesn't get too loud and the tape is clean and nothing fucks up, then you get this thing where the top end, the transients are tamed, a bit like soothed, if you will. You get this de-essing type of vibe there. The transients are tamed. The low end has a tiny tape bump. It goes like boof, boof. And all this happens at the same time, depending on what you put into it. So it's a compressor, and it's also saturation, and it will give you depth because of the movement in the track. Right? Awesome. So gluing, if you'd like. So we have that going on. Let me just play the drums. Actually, we'll go through the track, and I'll press number 4. And when I press number 4 on my keyboard, I can turn off these plugins. Now, the way you'll be able to see if I turn off the plugins is that the meters will stop working. Let's have a play through that, and then you should be able to pick up on the depth thing that I'm going on about.
Lifetime of memory in pictures of family. Love will lead us home. Each day we're grateful is all that we live for. Love will lead us home. Love will lead us home.
Okay, so with the tape bus, what I'm getting is my low end, that because the low end is being compressed down and the top end is being compressed down, basically the peaks are being compressed down, the sounds of the real drums that were there are being pushed up, and then we have a squishy sound and it comes up and it sounds a lot more full, and that's all being done with this tape, and I get this 3D depth to my sound, and I absolutely love that. Also with the vocals, what my main problem was is that there was too much harshness in there. So I took away my high-end emphasis and I took away the hardness from it, and it de-esses it a little bit more. It's a really nice way to get that analog-y feel, for a better lack of words, whatever. So if you don't find this tape good and you're used to a different tape, there's obviously other tapes as well. Tape 1B, tape 1C, tape 2, whatever. They all have a different vibe. For me, tape 1, instantly I put it on and I was like, okay, that's it, you know. And it's in my boutique little folder here with all the plugins that I keep from all these mixing episodes. All right, so next up, so you probably noticed that the song was very loud, and you're probably asking yourself, why is it that loud, and what have you done to get it that loud? Well, the reason why it's this loud is because Andy Grammer don't give up on me. He never gave up on loudness, and he's just like, louder. And also the band wanted it that loud as well. And they were just like, loudness, loudness, we need it loud. So I'm like, okay, we can do that, no problem whatsoever. So for loudness, what I did was a little bit sneaky. The first thing I wanted to do when I entered the mastering phase is put a limiter on the master bus and just slam it. I slammed it and figured out that this song was not having it. There were a couple of problems. And the way I figured that out was I let the song play back and I pushed the gain up as loud as it would go. And I needed a final loudness of about -6 LUFS, -5.6 LUFS. And I was playing this back and I was looking over on this graph and noticed that every single time the tom fill would come in, this graph was just slamming down and the sound was going, the volume would just go down and come back up. And I was just like, oh, we can't have that. That's terrible. So what do you do in that situation? Well, you go into your mix and you fix the little tom and you try to push it again. And you try to figure it out. Then I was like, you know what? We're going to triple limiter it, because if I put a limiter on the instrumental bus, on this one, I can control how the limiter is going to be reacting. With the gain reduction, I can make sure that if I EQ right and go into this limiter, I can have a loud instrumental without this final limiter having to do too much. Same with the vocals. If I EQ that right and I have my graphs open at the same time, like this and like this, and then I can go to my final limiter here and have that graph open, and I start pushing that in gain and I'm checking the other in gains like this. I can go back and forth the whole time, and then eventually I can go like, okay, Now with the measurement, here's the measurement, by the way, the integrated LUFS is over there. I know it's getting a bit busy on my screen, but now with the measurement, I can get to that minus 5.6 as the loudest part of the song. All right, so I was a happy pappy. Now, that's the way you do that. If also, this is the last part that you probably want to know this for. If you work with this kind of music, it's nice to have an instrumental ready and that you can deliver to any type of TV or radio station that they're eventually going to have to perform in. And you can then turn off the final master. It's still limited ever so slightly, but then when the broadcast station is going to ask like, Jesus, can you have it a little bit less loud? Then their limiter doesn't have to do a shit ton of compression as well, because every broadcasting thing will have another limiter on the top of that. So it would be limiting, unlimiting, unlimiting, unlimiting. So it'll be a little bit too limited. Anyway, same for the vocals. So we have an instrumental bus, a vocal thing there. And now we come to the piece de la resistance. So we had it loud. I wanted to get it clean loud. But when I listened back to Andy Grammer, I figured out that the compressor, when they slammed, was working so hard that the compressor was going, and that when I do this, going back up, that's the release, because the release is intelligent. It's trying to go back up to the top as fast as possible, so you can't hear it. But because it was slammed so hard, you get this distortion. Now, the distortion is also kind of cool, you know? So when you listen to that as a listener, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's hitting it so hard. Ooh, yeah, sexy. Now, I wanted that, but I also wanted control. I just didn't want my limiter to do all that. I kind of want to have that control thing. So here we have the harmony EQ. And the cool thing about this is it's your own custom tape. You can set your own EQ, you can set how hard that compresses, and you can set how hard the harmonics are going specifically to which points you activate on your EQ. All right. So I wanted a little bit of distortion just to push it as much as I could. And I'm just going to show you really quickly between the very soft to very hard setting so you can hear the distortion. I'm just going to also turn this on so you can hear it a little bit easier. There we go. Okay, so let's put it on very hard for a second and have a listen to a very hard distorted song.
Lifetime of memory in pictures of family. Love will lead us home. Each day we grateful is all I will live for. Love will lead us home.
All right, so there's a little bit of distortion there. Now you saw that I turned on these little points here, or nodes or whatever you call them. And then only when you turn on those nodes do those parts also start distorting. I only want a little bit of subtle in there and a little bit of at the top, and that's it. I didn't need anything else. So that all being said, Harmony EQ is awesome. It's going to also go into my boutique thing. Voxengo Elephant is awesome because I didn't show you guys this yet, but you can even adjust your how your limiter is working. You can make it a little bit more dull, or you can make it a little bit more sharp, for instance. It's quite nice. You have different algorithms as well. Pretty awesome if you want to get your nerd on. Oh yeah, no, last thing, here's a before and after, so you know what mixing does. So let's just listen to the before of the track too.
Lifetime of memory in pictures of family. Love will lead us home. Each day we grateful is all I will live for. Love will lead us home.
Now go check out Andy Grammer, Don't Give Me Up, to hear the final why the mix sounds the way it does. Because I could have taken that any direction, but it was specifically to Andy Grammer of how that was decided to sound like. If you have questions or you want me to check out your music, go over to patreon.com/catandbeats. There's 250 user-based questions over there. And it grows every day. So that's it. I'm going to go now and stop talking. All right, bye guys.